Hello and welcome back to Slow Damage. Why is there no sound? That's why. Then I realized he was probably about to say,
俺に埋めたウェブタグのことか。
His eyes flew open and he looked at me in disbelief.
どうしてそれを。
いろいろあって、エイジから俺の部屋に電話がかかってきた。その
エイジか。
Taku slumped his shoulders in defeat.
本当にやったんだ。
ああ。
Without looking up, he continued.
きっかけは朝倉に傷つけられたお前の姿を見た時だった。朝倉の傷の縫合手術をした時にお前の背にウェブタグを埋めたんだ。手術を終えて冷静になると後悔が押し寄せてきた。本当に
I did that by me.
謝っても許されないことをした。
He let out a heavy sigh.
だが朝倉のことがあってから俺は最悪の状況ばかり考えるようになった。ふらふらと出歩くお前が俺の知らないところで手遅れになったらと、その考えが頭をちらついて気が狂いそうだった。だとしてもそんなことは言い訳にならない。許してくれとは言わない。本当に悪かった。ウェブタグは必ず取り出す。お前が望むなら今すぐにでも。
Emotion welled up, and his expression twisted in pain.
怖いんだ。母親を助けられなかったあの日から何かを失うということがとてつもなく怖い。
許されなくてもいいと本当に思ってるのか。
Quietly, I broke my extended silence, and he stiffened.
それは
目を見ろよ。
Hesitantly, he met my gaze.
許されなくても本当にいいのか。
それはだが
答えろ。
I stared straight into his eyes.
許されたいよ。お前に許してほしい。
The moment the words left his lips, I balled my left hand into a fist and decked him in the face. This is for trying to stab me. I wasn't used to punching with my left hand, and it tingled.
これでチャラだ。
とは
ウェブタグは取り除けよ。
Furrowing his brow, he gritted his teeth and stared at the floor.
本当に悪かった。ありがとう。
His voice shook ever so slightly. Just then, there came a knock at the door. Fuck. Taku looked up and glared sternly in the direction of the sound.
おい、寝てんのか?
It was the meathead who had it out for me. Taku walked to the door. He opened it and the other man peeked in.
なんだ、あんたか。
怪我の様子を見てたんだ。
そうか。兄貴がその怪我野郎に伝言だ。あと1時間くらいで戻るから、兄貴の部屋で待ってろだと。
わかった。
Taku quietly closed the door, then walked back to me. He wore a bitter scowl on his face.
遠野がお前を呼んでる。
Silently, I moved to get up, but Taku gently pressed a hand on my shoulder to stop me. Without a word, he gazed into my eye.
行かないと。
ダメだ。
そういうルールだ。愛人としての。
His fingers dug into my shoulder.
それでも、ダメだ。
遠野が機嫌を損ねて暴れるぞ。
それでも、
Biting his lip, he shook his head.
ダメだ。愛人なんて。愛人なんて。やめろ。
ここにいる限り無理だ。
俺の方が無理だ。
Out of nowhere, he started screaming. Then he grabbed my other shoulder.
お前が、遠野を相手にするなんて、考えたくない。
Boy, are you lucky we haven't done anything.
そうなるくらいなら、やっぱり、殺してしまいそうだ。
The look in his eyes had surpassed desperation straight to madness. Quietly, I gazed back at him.
お前は、どうしたい？言えよ。
He closed his eyes in resignation and then looked at me once more.
お前に対する気持ちはずっと、肉親の情に近いんだと思ってたんだ。だが、違った。俺は。
He paused there but quickly found the will to continue.
お前に惹かれてるんだ。俺だけを見てほしいと思ってる。だから遠野の愛人なんてやめろ。
His fingers slowly grew tighter and tighter. I let out a chuckle and he scowled.
人に言わせておいて笑うなよ。
いや、昔からずっとこうだったと思って。
昔から？
タクはいつも俺のことを心配して真剣に俺を見てた。
Every time he examined me, it triggered this ticklish sense of nostalgia, and I had found it strangely soothing. I had probably always felt it, but only after I began to focus on Taku did I truly become aware of it. It was a feeling drawn out from the forgotten memories of my past. When I was a kid, I probably yearned for my appointments with Taku. Whenever he showed up, that was how I knew I'd be all right. After all, he would always make the pain go away. When I was young, I must have sensed that he was the only one who seriously cared about my well-being.
覚えてるのか？昔のことを。
なんとなく。それに、夢にお前が出てきたって言っただろ。
確かに。
子供の頃の俺は、お前が来ると安心した。お前が来るのをずっと待ってた。こいつは唯一、俺を守ってくれる大人だって思って。
とは。
そう考えると、こうしてずっと一緒にいるのも、不思議なことじゃないのかもな。お前のそばにいるのは居心地がいいって思ってたんだから。
Furthermore, I'd never admitted out loud, but I could remember how I felt when Taku got shot. In that moment, it felt like I'd suddenly lost my footing in the world. If I had to guess, it was probably the fear of losing him. I had never confronted that feeling until the moment I thought he might have died. Now I understood. That was the moment I stopped taking him for granted.
愛人はやめる。
He looked at me in confusion, then fixed me with a probing gaze.
それはどういう意味だ？
やめた方がいいだろ。
もちろんそうだが。
正直、恋愛感情だとかそういうのはよくわからない。けど、 俺はずっとお前のそばにいるのは悪くないと感じてた。
とは。
それに面白い言葉も聞けた。
面白い。
I let the silence fall. Holding eye contact, I slowly leaned in.
他の誰かに取られるくらいなら殺すなんて、お前の口から聞くとは思わなかった。誰かに取られなかったとしたら、俺がお前のものになるとしたらどうするのか。
とは。
Squinting affectionately, he reached out and gently stroked my cheek. Then his hand slipped behind my head and pulled me close. Hesitantly, he looked away. Then he let out a breath, and with all his courage, pressed his lips to mine. It was soft for a moment, and then he pulled away. This repeated a few more times, then I nibbled lightly on his lower lip. I can wait. You done? He kissed me passionately this time, plunging his tongue into my mouth. I welcomed it without hesitation and extended my own tongue in kind. His arms around me tightened as his kiss grew more intense. The feeling of his wet tongue on mine made the back of my skull tingle. How long had it been since I last relished the simple sweetness of physical intimacy? Our lips made sticky wet sound as they came together, slowly melting away each other's sense of rationality. I almost said reality. What I desired most was the thrill of pain. Normally, these sweet tickles would do nothing for me. And yet, for some reason, I found it arousing. Probably because he was someone I wouldn't have considered before now. Besides, I hadn't kissed like this in a long time, so I probably wasn't used to it. His tongue retracted and he pulled away briefly, pressing his forehead to mine.
もし辛かったら言えよ。
It was clear he was worried for my injuries, and I chuckled. Classic Taku, always dutiful and kind.
それはお前もだろ。
With a weary smirk, he stripped off his white lab coat. Then he cupped my cheek in both hands, almost like he was checking my temperature, and pressed his lips to my neck. We have a thumbnail. Then his hand slid under my shirt. His faintly sweaty palm traveled from my stomach to my chest, tracing over my many scars. I do like the art. My scars were my weak spot. I let out a moan of excitement. His lips descended from my neck to my clavicle, where his tongue traced over the raised bone while his free hand unbuttoned my shirt. With my bare chest exposed, he gazed hungrily at the big scar that cleaved my torso in two. It felt like he was fucking me with his eyes, and it made me squirm.
この傷も俺が縫った。
He murmured to himself as he pressed a finger to it. His dry, callous skin slowly traced my scars, sending a shiver down my spine.
この傷もこっちの傷も。
One by one, he touched my clavicle, my solar plexus, the spot just above my navel, and all the other scars. My breathing grew disordered. As he teased my erogenous zone, he looked up at me and chuckled.
どこもかしこも俺が縫った傷跡だらけだ。
Holding in a breath, he leaned down and pressed his lips to my biggest scar. Found his fetish. Reflectively, a whimper slipped out as he sucked down hard on the wound. An intense wave of pleasure shot up my spine. I begged in a breathy voice. He laughed and pressed his lips back to my chest. As he teased my scar with his tongue, he toyed with my nipple with one hand. A faint pleasure from my nip mingled with his tongue caresses, making me moan. My dick was already hard and burning hot, pitching a tent in my pants. And yet, as my frustration built, the sweet pleasure never progressed to anything more. At my request, he looked up at me. He pulled away from my chest. Then he held my gaze as he spoke.
これ以上はしない。
なんで？
お前がこれまでしてきた痛みを求める行為はセックスじゃない。G だ。そうか。
Relieved, he nodded to himself, then let out a tired laugh. I shot him an inquiring look, and he slowly shook his head.
いや、なんだか昔のことを思い出してな。
He gazed wistfully into the distance.
お前は子供の頃、しょっちゅう怪我をしていたし、体も弱くて熱を出すことが多かった。だが、お前のおふくろさんは仕事で家を空けることが多くてな。そういう時、俺がよく様子を見に行ってたんだ。お前、あの頃は全然喋らなくてな。笑ったり怒ったりすることもあまりなくて、妙に大人びてたよ。
可愛げのない子供ってやつか。
いや、どっちかというと心配してたよ。よく言えばおとなしくて手がかからないんだが、男の子ってのは好き勝手に暴れるくらいが普通だろ。だからあの時は家庭環境に問題があるんじゃないかとかいろいろと考えたよ。その後も大変なことが続いて、お前はあまり覚えてないみたいだが。
そんなに悲惨だったのか。
His expression darkened.
まあ、そうだな。
俺の母親は惚れてたんだろ。
惚れてたっていうより憧れてたんだ。綺麗な人だったからな。
どんな女だった？
俺もお前を診察する時しか会わなかったんだが、優しそうではあったな。それにいつも寂しそうにしてるというか、儚さみたいなもんがあったよ。何かを内に秘めているんだろうって思わせるような、そういう雰囲気があった。
He pursed his lips. Silence fell and drowsiness began to creep over me. Maybe I was just relieved to have Taku around. I was nodding off. I noticed him looking at me like he had something on his mind.
何？
いや、
言えよ。
He averted his gaze like he was debating whether to say it. Then finally, he looked back at me.
いや、気にするな。
は？
This was the opposite of what I expected. After a long, pregnant pause, I frowned.
気になる。
大したことじゃない。
I voiced my dissatisfaction in the form of a big, exaggerated sigh. He smiled stiffly, then composed himself, and looked back at me intently.
いろいろと本当にすまなかった。ウェブタグも必ず外す。
あ
あとは遠野か。
So what I'm hearing is kill him.
あ、それなんだけど。
Kill him. I used my left arm to push myself into a sitting position. He hastily reached out to help me.
遠野は本土の連中を巻き込むためのパーティーを計画していて、開催されるのは1週間後。そのために薬の完成を急いでるんだよな。
ああ、1週間後の午後5時だ。
俺たちが遠野に捕まる前、五十嵐がクリニックの地下から薬の試作品を盗んだって知ってるか？
そうだったのか。
He pressed a hand to his mouth in contemplation.
遠野には報告しなかったんだが、確かに試作品が消えていた。だから間違いなく誰かが入ったとは思ってたんだ。そうか、五十嵐君だったか。
試作品は今エイジが持ってる。エイジはそれを本土の警察へ持っていくつもりらしい。けどそれだけじゃ遠野を潰すには弱いから、お前に証言してほしいって。
なるほど、証言か。
Unsurprisingly, he looked conflicted about it. If he testified, he would get arrested too.
どうする？
やろう。
He lowered a hand from his mouth and nodded firmly.
いいのか？
ああ、最初から逃げるつもりはない。遠野に協力したことは事実だからな。
そうか。できるだけ時間稼ぎをしてくれ。エイジからまた連絡があるはずだから。
Just then, someone started pounding on the door.
おい、寝てるのか？
遠野だ。
Taku rose to his feet to answered the door. There stood Tono, visibly furious.
なんでお前がいる？
ドアの様子を見てたんだ。かなりひどいからな。
さすがに骨折は答えたか。
He scoffed.
とにかくドアは絶対安静だ。
うるさい。お前、薬はどうした？
目処は立ってる。あと少しだ。
だったら早く仕事に戻る。もう時間がない。
間に合うかは保証できないと最初に言っただろう。時間が足りないと。
それでも終わらせるという契約だ。
ああ、分かってる。
当たり前だ。
With that warning, he walked off. Taku sighed and shut the door and returned to the bed.
遠野はかなり苛立ってるな。ひとまず俺は戻るが、時間稼ぎは何とかしてみる。それとお前に手出しをするなとも言っておく。
聞かないだろ、そんなの。
説得する。1週間お前は部屋から出ないようにしてくれ。
ああ、エイジから連絡があったら伝える。
His expression stiff, he stroked his hair and left the room. All right, this looks like a good place to stop. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed it. It may seem like a shorter episode on YouTube, but trust me, it's a much longer episode than you think. Bye, guys. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description. If you're watching anywhere else, I'm on YouTube under Purity Sin Gaming and Simply Pure. Have a fantastic day, guys. Bye.
tonight.